you're going to have to deal with your bank. So you're going to want to set up a meeting with the appropriate bank officer at your bank, because you're going to need all new signature cards. Going to need board minutes that names you as a treasurer. You probably need something that looks official from your club with your own club logo on it that shows all the officers of the club. You may need to take more than one person along with you. You may have to have your president there as well as you to get all the records changed over. One of the things we found out when I took over as treasurer some years ago is that everything the prior treasurer had set up to be automatic and automatic payments out of the account, like for our facility usage and all that, for some reason just came to a stop when they changed all the officers out. And I didn't know that until we should have made a payment to the facility we meet in, and hadn't done so. Didn't know it until reviewing the first month's records, and found that they had stopped all the automatic payments that were coming out of the account. So the guy that we met with, the officer, probably didn't even know that that was happening. But so that's something, if they don't know, once you're in there and you're the new treasurer, you want to check into your account while that month is cranking along and make sure those automatics are still going. You also should have check stock. Hopefully your president treasurer has enough check stock to last you a little bit, but a lot of times there's some lead time on getting new checks, and you just don't want to run out. Make sure you get the endorsement stamps from the existing treasurer if you're not changing banks. If you are changing banks, you're going to need endorsement stamps for all of the accounts that you set up. And I would recommend getting a debit card for yourself, and we'll get into more of that later. And if you need credit cards on the account for yourself and other members of your club, this would be the time to get them. It does add a little bit to the complexity of how you do your job, but we'll get into a little bit of that later. And if at all possible, try to set up the checking account requiring only your signature. A lot of times the banks will say, well, we'd like to see 2 signatures on the checks, but as a practical matter, nobody really looks at the checks as they come through, and you can get away with probably just 1. But we set it up for only 1. So that's helpful, because, well, it used to be helpful. At least now that people don't travel at all, it may not be such a problem, but it's nice to have it down to just 1 signature. Okay, Bill. So during the fiscal year, set up a filing system of some kind. You can do it in a plastic boxes, or you can have filing cabinets or whatever, and set up a document retention system. When I took over as treasurer, the club was probably 6 or 7 years old, so it had several treasurers. And the guy that I took it over from had a room full at home of stuff, boxes, old records. And it was just too much it took me more than 1 carload to bring it home. So one of the first things I did was go to the board and ask for permission to rent a storage unit. And it's not that expensive, it's $100 a month or so, but it's a small storage unit that you can put all that stuff in. And once the fiscal year is over and it's been audited and everything, you can transport those records to that place. A big thing that I learned was to handle paperwork just once. So don't get something in the mail or get something from somebody and look at it and then set it aside, because that stuff builds up fast. Just handle it once and get it into your filing system, whatever it is. Just don't procrastinate. Copy everything and retain it. I have set up separate 4-inch 3-ring binders for everything. 1 for deposits, 1 for receipts, 1 for all the accounts, like if you have foundations or if you have grants going or whatever like that. And I would highly recommend to have a CPA that you work with. We do. And if you need to have a foundation, you do need a separate set of records. That's a whole other ballgame. We'll be light today on talking about foundation treasury duties. We'll talk about it a little bit, but if you have questions on it, you can ask them. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, other than it does complicate your work, and you really ideally should have a separate treasurer for your foundation. And then I believe you guys have pretty good separation at your club for your.
We have absolute separation. Different boards, different treasurers, and the boards cannot be mixed. So you can't have one member be on both boards.
Yeah, that's what they recommend to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So any of you that don't have that, it would be a good idea to do it. Okay. Bill, you want to go to the next one? One thing might be some confusion about is who actually sends out the bills to your members. What do I mean by bills? That depends. It depends on where you meet and how you bill for it. Do you collect at the meeting? Do you collect for your breakfast or lunch or dinner, or do you have people pay in advance for it? Or how your club sets it up? In our case, for example, before the COVID-19 hit, we were meeting in a retirement center, and they charged us $13 for every breakfast. So we assumed that there'd be a minimum attendance every week, and then we paid that automatically, repetitively to the facility, and that's what we billed everybody for, was the X number of weeks times the breakfast fee. And I had the CPA do that. He's got everything on QuickBooks. It's easy for him to send out a bunch of bills, and I pass them out at meetings, and anybody that wasn't there, I would mail them. So that's how I did that. And how did you guys do it?
We bill for our meals quarterly or annually. So we're not doing and the only people that pay every meeting are guests and our honorary members.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know from being AG that every club does the meetings a little bit differently in how they collect. Sometimes they'll charge even the AG for coming to the lunch or whatever, and other times not. So it's just how you ever do it. It's okay, however you do it. It's just a matter of doing it on a timely basis. Now, what I've learned to do is every time I get a check, is I make a copy of it. Of course, you can make a copy of several at one time, but I would make a copy of it, and then I would deposit those checks, and I would use the ATM, because the ATM can give you a receipt with a photocopy of every check. So that's kind of a double whammy, but my CPA loves it in that I have big copies that he can read easily, and then he sees check set against every check that went through. So it just makes it easy for him, and anything you can do to make it easy for him is good for you. So that's what I did. Annette, you didn't do that, but that's what I did. So okay, we have two boards, of course, like Annette was saying, one for the foundation and one for the club. And every month you should make pretty complete reports on every single different financial entity within your club and foundation. And like in our case with the foundation, we have the foundation itself. We had the Nightmare of Beaver Lake account, which was huge as a fundraiser. We also had separate accounts for each grant that we were a lead club on, all on separate accounts. So the report that you make, like in our case, it's 14 pages long every month to the boards. details every single account, all the activity that's going in there. And some of it's pretty routine, doesn't require a lot of explanation to the board members, but at least they know what your cash positions are every month. And if there's anything unusual, they would be aware of it right away. And also keep them advised on how the members are doing on being current with their bills. Because you don't want to let it go too long, especially now with people out of work, because you might need to intervene and help them out. There's some pretty good instructions on the Rotary International website as to how to deal with that sort of thing in the best way. So I would let you go find that out on there. Also, there are forms, and if not taxes, there's certainly fees to pay at various times a year, and you just want to do that on a timely basis. I bought a paid stamp that I'll show you here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, and it shows the date you paid it and the check number, and it's a pretty prominent stamp, and it's always on the top page of whatever set of little documents that I have in my 3-ring binders, so it makes it easy for the auditors when they go through. It makes it easy for the CPA as well. So that's what I do. How about you, Annette?
We do the same thing. We have a paid stamp, but our profit and loss balance sheet, outstanding checks, information comes each month to the board. Same thing for our foundation, and we do have separate accounts that track each of the items, or each of the general items that we're working on, whether it is scholarships has one account, or this year's funds that we're dispersing has one account, the funds that we're gathering for next year is another account. Yeah, fairly simple, couple of pages each. So it's just not that complicated for us.
Yeah, that's good. Next slide, Bill. I would recommend developing a formal check request form. I've done it on a spreadsheet, and it's pretty detailed, but it's, of course, who's making the request for funds of any kind, and what account should be charged. Should it be club, foundation, or anything within either one of those that you're keeping separate records for? Of course, the receipts. The form should be signed. It should have a purpose on there. It should be signed by the requester. Where the check should go. If it's a credit card they've used, it's just to clear the card. If it's something that needs to be paid back to them, that's another checkbox. Or if it needs to be sent to the provider of service, that's another checkbox. And then they should put the name and address of who that is. And it should also be signed by a board member, preferably the president. Nobody that's getting the check themselves should authorize their own check. It should be somebody else. But it's a one-page form. It makes everything tidy. And if they have a credit card and are using the credit card, they should be filling that request out before the bill comes from the bank for the credit card bill. And I keep that in a separate binder myself, and make sure everything is fully authorized by the time that bill comes in and I pay it and know where to assign it. My butt's covered on the receipts and everything. So that makes it easy. I'd also recommend developing a form to use at meetings to account for the funds received during the meetings. And that form should track with your budget. Depending on how finitely you budget, you might budget for raffles or fines or happy bucks or guests, how many guests are coming on, how much, and all the facility charges that you might have and how you account for that. Just whatever you do within your club in terms of reporting back out for line by line budget items, they should all be separate on that form. They should sign it that you're beginning the meeting with the proper cash count. Should sign it that they're ending the meeting with the proper cash count. It should have an attendance number there, how many were there, how many guests were there, what the program was that day, and any cash that comes in right after the meeting. I just go right to the bank with the cash and get a receipt, and then I attach that receipt to that form. If there's any checks that come in, of course, I make copies of them and do like I did explain before. If you do that, that kind of forces you not to procrastinate, so that you're ready. If your CPA calls and says, I need the books, you're always ready with the books. So that's how I do it. How about you on that?
Very similar operation. We do, again, it's a little simpler for us because it's a smaller club. We don't have quite that many transactions going on, but we do have a sheet that tracks attendance, does track the cash that's coming in, does track our speaker. So very, very similar.
Okay. We had a question from the floor, Bernie, that I think is relevant. It's from Claudina from Mercer Island. It's that when a president is requesting a refund for an expense that is included in the budget, you still require a second board member to sign the expense reimbursement form?
Refund?
Yeah, when a president is requesting a refund for an expense that is already included in the budget, you still require a second board member to sign his expense reimbursement form.
I certainly would. Just to be safe. What you don't want to get into is a situation where you're either reimbursing yourself or the board member that's authorizing whatever that transaction is. So if the president himself is involved or herself with money going out of your club, be it a refund or an expense that they've incurred, I would have somebody else sign the authorization that's on the board.
Okay.
That answer your question?
I haven't opened it up yet
Okay.
so I can't see any hands raising at the moment. But she says thank you.
Okay. So you want to get to the last slide there, Bill?
Sure.
At the end of your term, not that you look forward to this in any way, but again, just to repeat that the budget is the same as when you came in, and that you're going to have to do a new one because both boards are going to have to approve it, and then insist on an audit, independent audit of your records. This can be done by club volunteers. And then, of course, that report should be submitted to the various boards and approved and made part of the records. The purpose of the audit is several fold. One is to make sure that there is no hanky-panky going on with any of the accounts. There's been clubs that have had trouble with this. One of the things auditors should do is to verify with the bank or whatever institution your money is in that the money is really there. Just don't take a spreadsheet word for it that it's in the bank. Verify that it's in the bank. Obviously, they don't need to audit every record you did all year, but rather try to just do some random samplings out of each account and see the records. Make sure all the procedures were followed, that the receipts are there, that they add up, that they're properly approved, and this sort of thing. Because you want everybody to feel comfortable with the integrity of the job that's been done. So don't not have an audit. It doesn't have to be a professional audit by a CPA, but at least have 3 or 4 members of your club on an audit team that audits your books. How about you on that?
Same.
Same.
We don't go to quite that detail, but yes, we make sure all the numbers are correct and that everything's been handled properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, you have to make the detailed annual reports to the various boards with all the records. That almost goes without saying, but then you'll be done. Howard McCohen has raised his hand. Bill, do you want to handle Howard's?
Sure. I've got a couple questions here. One of them, two of them actually come from Claudina again, and also from Gene Weathers, and I kind of saved it to the end because it has to do about retention of documents. And one of them is, you know, the length and things like this of retention, and then there's also the new medias, the way, you know, whether it's the cloud-based CDs or whatever. It's almost like a best practice type of question, and we'd like to hear probably from both of you exactly how you would handle the retention of required documents that a Rotary Club would have to do, and probably the best way that you would recommend doing that. I'll start with Bernie, I guess, to begin with. And
Yeah, the way I do it, I mean, my assumption is that the records have to be kept for 10 years, which may be a little extra built into the plan, but I use banker boxes that you can buy, and they make a nice box. You can put your 3-ring binders in there, and you label it as to what it is, and the date, the year of the fiscal year that you got the records for, and then a destroy date out there 10 years from now. So that's just the way I do it. I mean, you could, I suppose, microfilm everything if you wanted, but save some space. But even in our club's case, which runs hundreds of thousands of dollars through the accounts every year, and 7 or 8 4-ring 4-inch binders, that's working for us. So, and that, how do you guys do it?
We don't do it quite to that detail. We do have all of the information, but we don't go to the extent of making the extra copy of checks and so forth. We have that through our bank. Our bank statements will show those checks coming in and going out. So we have access that way. Plus we have the original deposit slips and so forth. We do keep all of those things. So we have, our banker box will hold more than 1 year just because we have, we're operating on a much smaller.
Yeah, I even go so far as to keep copies of all of the billings that we've made. So it may be totally redundant, but I do keep them in a binder, and they're in the records. So.
Right, we do have it on the computer and then a backup to the computer. So that's our redundancy.
Yeah, I might be an old-fashioned belt and suspenders kind of a guy. Love the feel of paper, but that's how I do it. So.
Yeah, I've got Howard's raised his hand. Howard, I've allowed you to go ahead and talk. So Howard, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Okay, so I have a 2-part question. First of all, you guys are doing a great job. This is, you can never get enough information, and this is really great for incoming treasurers or people who want to be a treasurer, even if not of Rotary, of any organization. But 2 questions, they both have to do with the checking account or the bank account. One is, and I may have missed it, but what is your recommendation on the number of signers on checks?
Well, personally, I would recommend that you only have 1. It depends somewhat on the bank, depending on the bank. We've had different banks involved with our accounts over the years, and some of them suggested, at least, that we have 2 signatures on the checks going out. But I'll tell you, that's a real pain to try to do. And even though that bank suggested it, rarely did we do that. And from a practical perspective, when those paper checks float through the system and get recorded and all that, nobody looks at them. You could sign Mickey Mouse on there, nobody'd know it.
Or not at all. I've seen checks come back without signature, but the only thing is though, from a checks and balance point, if it's all possible, I would recommend 2 signatures because it just keeps everybody on the up and balance on that. I mean, that's just a recommendation, just so that there's no surprises. You know, the old saying of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The other question was the bank statement when it comes back, and who typically does that come back to? Does that come back to the treasurer, or does that come back to someone independent so that somebody can independently work with the treasurer to balance the checking account?
Yeah. What I do is it comes back to me, and I put it in my binder where I make the payments. And then every month my books go through my CPA. So he looks at those.
But I'm not sure most clubs use a CPA on an annual monthly basis throughout the year. And so if they don't use a CPA and it's just the treasurer for the year, I would recommend for a smaller club or mid-sized club that that the bank statement go to someone independent of the treasurer, and then the bank statement is reconciled so that there's always, you know, there's never that, oops, something happened and all of a sudden it's too late. I don't know. Annette, what is your thought about that?
I can see your point, but we don't do that. The treasurer gets the bank statement. The bank statement is balanced every month.
By the treasurer.
Pardon me?
By the treasurer.
By the treasurer. It's all reflected in the financials that we present to the board every month. We do, our banker is a member of our club. That helps a lot in making sure that, I mean, so there's access. The president can always get access to the bank statement if there's a concern. And then when we, so at any point that there's that, or the board can get access to the statement. We just never find it to be a problem. I think we're going on the fact that, you know, it's part of the 4-way test, you know, is it the truth? And so, again, with a smaller club, it's pretty hard for, you know, things to go sideways.
Yeah, and the check reimbursement form that we have that's signed by the requester and the board member is in effect requiring 2 signatures on money going out, and it's, you know, it's audited. So
yes.
Thank you. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad thought. If you want to do that, have a standing audit committee perhaps, and the chairman of that committee would be the person to get those bank statements.
Right.
Exactly.
There's Bernie, I was given by one of your club members the Sammamish kind of the procedures with the on how you review the accounts and how you review the books. Not an audit per se, because an audit was the CPA firm, and I was quite impressed by it. You know, I think that you should. I think if we can make that available, that'd be a great thing to do, or maybe share that. I think it's about 1.5 pages that your club does. I would suggest, and maybe we can get that forwarded on. I think it's important that the treasurers actually, and the club has a way to review everything almost on an annual type basis, kind of double check everything. It's to make sure that everything's working properly.
Yeah, and again, the auditors don't audit every transaction, but rather a sample.
Yeah, spot check.
And what our auditors do is they get the bank statements for the entire year from all the accounts, and they pour through those, and then they pick out the ones that look the most complicated. And they're pretty good at that.
We have one more. We got a couple questions here. Guidelines are great docs to store in DAC-DB files. That's from Kay. And also that's just a comment. And also Larry, one solution could be to ask the bank to send out multiple statements, one copy to treasurer, another to the president, which I've seen that done too. And so I appreciate those comments. One question that Jean we're going to have some fun here for a second. And it's a question that Jean asked. It says, does your club bill monthly dues to a member's credit card? And so I'm going to launch a poll, something that you don't see too often in the webinars. And if you just say yes or no, does your club bill monthly dues to members' credit cards? She just was interested. And we'll do it for about another 2 or 3 more seconds. And we're getting up there. Almost everybody's voted. And I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. There we go. So it's kind of a unique thing to have with the club. With that being said, I do not see any more hands. I do not see any more questions. Bernie, Annette, do you have anything else to say before the meeting is ended here?
One thing, to the extent that you're involved with foundation work, every donation to your foundation should be acknowledged in writing, and it should state that there was no quid pro quo. It just thanks for the donation. And then there's a compliance statement that should be part of the letter as well, and you probably already have that. It should include your tax ID number and the fact that you're a 501c3 and that your contribution is fully tax deductible. But it restates that no goods or services have been received in exchange for this contribution.
Annette, do you have anything, final words here?
Just that if people want to reach out directly, I'm certainly available for, one-to-one and meeting with any treasurer that would like some assistance. I like to see if they're using QuickBooks or something similar, if they've gotten their chart of accounts and so forth set up, and the preparation and the presentation of those statements to be as correct as possible. So I'm certainly available for that.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Looks like we have one more person with a raised hand.
Oh, well, Steve, thank you so much. I'll allow Steve to talk here. Steve, if you want to unmute yourself, I think I unmute you. I'll try it again. Go ahead, Steve. Steve, I have unmuted you. Go ahead. Can you talk? And I have a couple more questions in Q&A. People want to see that audit form. Okay, Bernie.
Okay.
I can't get Steve to go ahead and reply, even though his mic is open, it says. So if you can type in your question, Steve. The question is, do most clubs have their treasurer post transactions to a QuickBooks file?
We do always. We use QuickBooks, and
yeah, we do.
Good. Okay. I'm sorry we couldn't hear you, Steve, but I hope that answered your question. That our club uses QuickBooks too, and I know that the district uses QuickBooks. So if that could kind of help answer your question. With that being said, I really don't see anybody else or any other questions going on right now. We thank you so much. I think this is a good topic to be talking about, and it's going to be recorded. And also, we do have your email addresses, and so if we can get Bernie to send that little that little review process that they have at the club, I think I have it, Bernie, and we'll double check it, and I can send it out. That being said, I thank you so much, everybody. And look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks, Annette. Bye, Bernie.
Bye-bye.
Yep.